Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Kia ora, Bolt fam. It's the Director. Chargers fans, well, I would call this being one of the most successful off seasons of all time for the Chargers, right? The additions of Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, and then a slew of other notable free agents and impressive rookies really does make for a majorly exciting offseason, right? I'm excited. You guys are excited. The potential for the Chargers is sky high in 2020, right? But we can't cut our check guaranteeing a Chargers Super Bowl appearance just yet. No, this is the NFL after all, right? The competition is going to be stiff, and even some of the best rosters of all time did not make the postseason altogether. Still, I do think that the Chargers have a very good shot at the playoffs this year because of the additions that we've made, the elevated talent of Justin Herbert, future Hall of Famer, an impressive defense, and of course, year 2 in coaching under Brandon Staley, and even more notable, I would say to some people, the Lombardi offense being the first consistent offense in Justin Herbert's career. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, but it won't come easy. We are in a majorly competitive division in the AFC West, which is absolutely loaded at every corner. But beyond that, the Chargers are going to have some tough matchups to prepare for in the regular season as well. But what if we do make the postseason, right? What happens then? The road does get even bumpier, whereas we're going to be facing some of the best in the NFL. So today, I'm going to go map out the biggest threats to the Chargers in 2022 in both making the postseason and even the Giants we might have to slay once we get in, right? Don't worry, I don't mean the New York Giants. I'm not completely delusional yet. I mean it metaphorically, okay? So with that, let's get into this one. Before we do, question in the comments like we always do. How many wins do you think it's going to take for the Chargers to make it into the playoffs? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll give you guys my answer at the end of the video. Now with that, guys, let's get into this one. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, the small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera. The biggest threats to the Chargers in the 2022 season. Who are we going to have to take down to get into the playoffs, and who might we have to face once we potentially get in? We're going to start here with an honorable mention in the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, the division opponents are going to be all over this video. As for who might be at the bottom this year, for me at least, I think it could be the Vegas Raiders because everybody's just become so bolstered with talent. But that doesn't mean that the Raiders are any push-offs this season, right? The Raiders are coming off a fresh playoff year. They're legitimate threats, in my opinion, one that the Chargers twice this season at least are going to have to be taken seriously, right? Especially with the additions highlighted by, Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. Those were pretty significant, and it is going to make this team better, which already does feature talent like Max Crosby, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. And you can maybe sprinkle in a little bit of Derek Carr, right? But still, have they done enough? Especially in this AFC West, which has become so unpredictably, insane. I don't know. Can they survive the division? It's really going to come down to, in my opinion, defense. But we'll get more into that in just a little while. I do believe the Chargers on paper, however, are a far superior team, especially because of that defense. But being a division rival, we cannot take the Raiders lightly. So of the 3 AFC West opponents, I think the Chargers need to sweep Vegas the most. I think it carries the most potential. And honestly, I think it would be a little bit nice given the concluding events of the 2022 regular season for the Chargers, all right? So there's your honorable mention in the Vegas Vegas Raiders. Now, coming up next here at number 8 is going to be the Arizona Cardinals, okay? And again, these are going to be opponents that we do face in the 2022 season, at least at first, before we do get into the potential division, or I should say playoff opponents. Now, the Arizona Cardinals are a tricky team to me, okay? They started out super hot in 2022. You guys remember, if you had Kyler Murray in your fantasy team early in the season, you were grinning ear to ear. This dude's going to lead you to the championship. But you know what happened after that? They went on to win like one of their final 5 games. I think they started like 10-2, and then they ended 11-6, and then ultimately got blown out in the first round of the playoffs versus the Los Angeles Rams. What is this team? They got so much talent. Were they derailed by unfortunate circumstances, or is there really some cracks in the armor starting to show? I don't know. But in my opinion, I do still think this team has some serious talent, and more importantly, speed. Now, Kyler Murray is a speed demon. We know that. At quarterback, that has proven to be a problem for the Chargers in the past. This season, that could change, but speed is something that definitely we need to highlight, bold, underline, as something the Chargers need to work on containing. And not just that, they just added another speedy player in Marquise Brown. You guys remember that during the draft? They traded, I think, their first-round pick to go get Marquise Brown, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens. Super fast wide receiver. And when you pair that with the legs of a Kyler Murray, it can be a bit problematic, right? Again, the Chargers have struggled versus elite mobile quarterbacks in the past. Now they got a very elite, in terms of speed, wide receiver. We're going to have to prove that we can shut that down. And beyond that, I feel like the Cardinals roster overall is looking pretty strong. They're featuring players like James Conner, Zach Ertz, Budda Baker, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt even should be coming back. And I do think DeAndre Hopkins will be back from a 6-game suspension by this time as well. So no breaks for the Chargers. We're gonna face the full-on brunt of it. Still, I do feel like the Chargers roster seems more favorable at this point. And again, a lot of this, I'm not going to say it over and over, but on paper, feels a lot more favorable, but it all depends on their ability to contain Kyler Murray, in my opinion. So while fending off some beastly defensive talent as well, I do think the Chargers have a good chance. I would say they're maybe favorable in this matchup, but it's definitely one to keep an eye out on the schedule this season. Now, next up at number 7, again, no surprise, we have another division rival in the wild AFC West, but this one to me is also a bit tricky, you know, a bit somewhat unpredictable in my opinion, because on one hand, you know, the addition of Russell Wilson is really what elevated this team to maybe a top 15, top 10 team to a lot of people in their opinion in the NFL. But on one hand, you got Russell Wilson, who's coming off, you know, his worst season ever in Seattle. I think we can all agree that he was not the Russell Wilson of old in 2021. He struggled mightily. I remember seeing him in a couple of my fantasy leagues, you know, hitting the free agent market there. It was bad. It was criminally bad. So we can hope that trend continues in Denver with Russell Wilson. Maybe, just maybe, that trade doesn't work out for Denver. But on the other hand, you do have to prepare for the worst. Maybe the Denver Broncos got something special in Russell Wilson, very reminiscent of their days in picking up a Peyton Manning. We have to prepare for that. We've lived through it once before. Not too long ago, we got to be ready to face it again, because Wilson is a massively huge name for a reason, and there is a big shot that he does bounce back. But even bigger than that, I feel like the Broncos have always had a very strong defense, right? If their offense can subtly keep up, it might cause some issues for the LA Chargers and their playoff hopes. They're also led by a strong running attack on their offense, featuring Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, and while also boasting 3 decent pass catchers in Jerry Jeudy, Patrick, Sutton. It's going to be a big test for our defense, especially if Russell Wilson can bounce back in 2022. But what's most concerning, as with most years being a Chargers fan facing the Denver Broncos, is their defense. They got guys like Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, Pat Surtain, Justin Simmons. This is a very, very strong unit, and one that year after year, even if their star power isn't as elevated, has proven to be very consistent. So the Chargers, in my opinion, again, they do have the upper hand, especially with Denver's poor offensive line, you know, facing the duo of guys like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. But it's an opponent the Chargers must win one, if not both games, to help their playoff hopes. So Denver Broncos, kind of still waiting to see how that pans out. We're going to know, I would say, by week 5 or 6 in the regular season, but it's one to definitely pay attention to. A lot of people have the Broncos as a surprise to win the division, even as bolstered as it is right now, because of the addition of Russell Wilson. A lot rides on Russell Wilson for the Broncos this season. Next up at number 6, we've got the San Francisco 49ers. And I think the Niners might be the last tricky team on this list for me, one that I can't quite nail down. And it's because of that quarterback situation still being somewhat murky in San Francisco. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, right, who's been kind of proven, right? Maybe a decent game manager, you can say. Of the game managers, maybe Garoppolo stands above the rest. But Trey Lance, on the other hand, in my opinion at least, does carry the higher upside. The dude's fast. He's got a big arm. If he can start cleaning up his game, cleaning up his accuracy, he could definitely be the better quarterback in San Francisco. Either way, quarterback situation aside, this team is pretty loaded from top to bottom, right? Pass catchers, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and the presumed Deebo Samuel, who is going through some offseason drama. Maybe he's with the team, maybe he's not. I do think he stays in San Francisco. That's a pretty strong trio of pass catchers. And it doesn't really seem to matter who's running the football either. At the position of halfback, Kyle Shanahan could really, give a dang. Because his system, his scheme seems to really favor whoever happens to be touting the rock. So that offense looks pretty good. And I do think the Bolts defense is up to the challenge. Again, we have a lot of nice pieces on defense this season to match up against a team even like the San Francisco 49ers. But their biggest strength in San Francisco lies in their defensive talent. And I do think that's a huge reason why they were a very strong team last season as well. Nick Bosa, Armstead, Fred Warner. I think they just added Charvarius Ward, right? These guys are going to be problematic. If the Chargers offensive line can stay healthy, however, by let's say I think it's week 10 that we face these guys, I think we're in good shape. But it's going to be another big test for Justin Herbert facing yet another elite defense in the league. I think we're very capable of taking down the Niners, but that defense is going to be one of the bigger tests of the 2022 regular season, all right? And then finally, the last team to feature in the regular season that's going to be problematic for the Chargers is the Los Angeles Rams, our neighbors just next door. Now, I know some people might think, oh, it's kind of a shocker to see, the recent Super Bowl champs come in at just number 5, right? Well, it's because they reside in the NFC, right? If they were in our conference, I'm pretty sure they would be number 1 on my list. And again, this is going to be a crazy, crazy game. Week 17. I think is going to be one of those highlighted games of the season. Football fans in general are going to be very excited to see, the battle for LA, especially with both teams looking just so freaking good. And we know the Los Angeles Rams are good, having won the Super Bowl last season. These guys are wildly talented, but I do think we have a chance to close out the season strong. If we can really pull everything together, all the gel starts, coming together. The chemistry is starting to form. Week 17, by this time, the team hopefully should be ready to face a team like the LA Rams. But the Rams, once again, no joke, right? These guys are loaded. Stafford, Kupp, the returning Cam Akers, right? I know some people are excited for him. Allen Robinson, Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Ernest Jones, who saw a very nice season last year. They just added Bobby Wagner. They got Jalen Ramsey. This is one of the most loaded rosters in the entire league right now, right? But the Chargers, if you really do think about it, are going to put up a very strong fight, as our roster has also been highly regarded to be one of similar quality to the Los Angeles Rams, which is kind of crazy, right? At least on paper right now, right? This roster looks like it could potentially go head-to-head. When it comes to an overload of superstar power or whatever, the Chargers and the Rams kind of look a little bit similar, right? So if the Bolts can rally a win in Week 17, right, it will prove that they are very much so battle-tested to take on the postseason in full force. So in a way, scary opponent, right? Former Super Bowl champions, most recent Super Bowl champions, but at the same time, a very good test for the Chargers. If they do make it into the postseason, they will have faced some of the best, and that's not even including our AFC West division rivals. So here, getting into the final 4 teams, all right, guys, we're going to call this the playoff boss fights, all right? And these are, for obvious reasons, these guys will be the biggest test for the Chargers if they do make it into the postseason. The Chargers' odds to make the seasons, I do think, is very, very high. But what happens from there? It really does depend on how ready they are to take on some of the best star-studded teams in the NFL. So at number 4, and the first playoff team represented on this video, is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, for some people, which kind of crazy, when I was kind of looking around the web, researching, making sure I had my ducks in a row when it came to the Cincinnati Bengals offseason, I feel like they're surprisingly slept on right now, which is fair. I feel like a lot of people feel that 2021 may have been a Cinderella story for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. It kind of just all came together. But I do still feel like this team is transformed, right? We cannot dismiss the fact that they were in the Super Bowl, right? They were runners-up. They were very, very good. And Joe Burrow, to me, admittedly, I will say, is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league, not named Justin Herbert. His talent elevates that offense tremendously. If it wasn't for that offensive line that held them back in years past, I think they would have, grown into the version of themselves a lot sooner. So the Cincinnati Bengals want to take very seriously, one that I do think will likely see the postseason yet again this year. But this season in particular, again, O-line being one of those biggest drawbacks of Cincinnati, they added what? Lael Collins, a pair of quality guards, and Alex Kappa and Ted Karras. This issue should be at least much improved in 2022, right? And maybe not the best line in the league, but a semi-protected Joe Burrow is a big leap from what they've had in years past. And Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, this offense is going to look hot, especially with a little bit of extra protection and running room. So you got to watch out for that offense, which, again, I still think should be held in high regard. But their defense is no pushover either, right? They're pretty good. If you take a look at last season, they were one of the best run defenders in the league. DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson, very, very good players. And you add on top of that Jesse Bates and now Daxton Hill, who I was very high on in the draft. That makes for a pretty tough opponent. So if the Chargers do happen to make it into the postseason, watch out for the Cincinnati Bengals. We did beat this same roster last season, minus the additions that they had this offseason. Last season, remember, the Chargers did defeat the Cincinnati Bengals, but they are going to be improved. So that's going to be one to watch out for if we do make it into the postseason. Now, next up here at number 3 of teams to watch out for is going to be the Baltimore Ravens, mainly Lamar Jackson, right? The Chargers could very realistically face the Ravens in even the first round of the postseason this season if we make it in, right? And this one worries me a little bit, right? Lamar Jackson. I get Lamar Jackson can have some issues at times, right? And maybe his health isn't the best, but overall, I think he's a great quarterback. And his biggest trait is absolutely 100%. If you play Madden, if you watch the NFL, if you read any sort of NFL insiders, Lamar Jackson's fast. Very fast. Maybe the fastest quarterback in the league right now. And again, like I said with Kyler Murray earlier in the video, this could be problematic for the Chargers, right? If the Chargers can find a way maybe to slow down mobile quarterbacks this season, maybe when they do face guys like, Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray, I feel like it will help our chances quite a bit at slowing down Lamar Jackson and his elite speed. But even outside of that, this offense has some big talent. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, these guys will be back from injury, right? Rashad Bateman, who I think's being slept on. Devin Duvernay, who looks like a stud. Mark Andrews, a strong offensive line. This is a tough offense. But again, that speed of Lamar Jackson is going to be the biggest test there. But it's also their defense that I think might even be tougher than their offense, even with Lamar Jackson, right? Especially now that they've added Kyle Hamilton in this last season's NFL draft. I think a lot of people know how good that guy is, man. A lot of people compare him to Derwin James. If he pans out, that defense has just gotten even better. They already had, Michael Pierce, Calais Campbell, Tyus Bowser, Odafe Owe, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and even the newly added Marcus Williams, right? This is a very, very strong group. So if Herbert and the Chargers offense, as well as their defense, can hold strong, I do think that we can take them down. We've done it before. I think we did it with Phillip Rivers in 2019. But until we can prove it, we can consistently contain mobile quarterbacks, they're going to remain a big threat for me, and that's why they are number 3 on this list of potential threats for the Chargers. Now, coming into our final 2 teams at number 2, who do you guys think we're going to go with here? There's a couple of teams I know that are widely regarded as Super Bowl threats this year. Well, number 2, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? And I think this might parallel with a lot of other lists out there, but realistically, I absolutely do agree, right? The Chiefs were always going to make this list, of course. And I think it's pretty realistic to think that if we make the postseason this year, they're likely going to be in the mix as well. And even though it's not super likely to meet a division rival in the playoffs. I know in seasons previous to 2020, it was almost impossible. Since then, I think it is a little bit more likely. And I think this year in particular, it's especially possible. If the Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs come out with similar records, it's not too far-fetched to think that they could meet in the postseason. But even furthermore, our battles in the regular season will likely be a big deciding factor in whether or not we even make it into the postseason. If the Chargers really want to usher in the era of the Bolt, they're going to have to take down the Kansas City Chiefs at least once, right? If we could sweep them, that's like my biggest dream, but we're going to have to go through them if we do want to make it into the postseason. This division's still very tough, and the Chiefs are kind of still the team to beat in the AFC West, and maybe even one of the best in the conference still, right? But I still must point out, every time we talk about the Chiefs, I have to mention that they have shown cracks in their armor, right? Losing Tyreek Hill is going to be felt, right? I think a lot of people are dismissing the significance of Tyreek Hill. As a Chargers fan, I understand the significance of Tyreek Hill. That dude absolutely just broke us at some points in years past. Those broken plays going all the way, from a pass to the flats was not unfamiliar to a guy like Tyreek Hill. That's going to be felt. That void is going to be felt. And you cannot fill that void with guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They might be able to help in some ways, but at the same time, the level of Tyreek Hill is just unprecedented. And additionally, I could say even that the Chiefs defense has seen better days after losing Tyrann Mathieu. They have some good pieces, but they've not really been known for a strong defense the past couple of seasons. Still, this is Patrick Mahomes we're talking about, right? This is the Chiefs. This is Andy Reid. Until proven otherwise, the Bolts will have to go through them to make the postseason and maybe even make it deeper into the playoffs if we happen to run into them there. I do believe, however, though, that the Bolts roster, especially this season, the free agent acquisitions, the draft, everything, I think it's built around with this in mind, right? This whole thing has been built with how do we counter the Kansas City Chiefs? We do have a counter for everyone, right? Derwin James on Travis Kelce, Bosa and Mack versus Patrick Mahomes. Herbert can dice up that secondary easily. It's a matter of who can come out on top. But still, until we prove it, the Chiefs are number 2 on this list. And finally, the number 1 team that the Chargers might need to prepare for, a big threat, especially if they make it into the postseason this year, is going to be the Buffalo Bills. And if you guys read anything online, football related, 2022 power rankings, all that kind of stuff, this might be the hottest team in the AFC right now for good reason. The biggest probably being Josh Allen. You see there, number 17, right? Josh Allen, heck of a quarterback, heck of an upbringing, in Buffalo. He's really grown into one of the best in the league. He's taken strides the last few seasons in Buffalo. And now I do feel like not just me, but he's widely regarded as a top 3 cornerback in the NFL. His big arm paired with, Stephon Diggs and other weapons is a pretty dominant combo. Sure, their run game probably needed a little bit of help, but they just drafted James Cook, who I was also pretty high on. That's Dalvin Cook's brother, right? That has huge potential to change that situation in Buffalo. I do also think they added O.J. Howard, who has a chance to break out in that system on offense as well. But like many teams that we've seen on this list, I think it's their defense that really does raise eyebrows. That offense is already really good, but that defense, they got Tre'Davious White, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. We got Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, now Kaiir Elam, who, again, I was high on in the draft. Big, fast defender. That's a strong secondary. They got, Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Shaq Lawson on that defensive line. Very powerful. But what's even more insane is that this defense was already really good last season, and they just added Von Miller on top of that to complement Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds at the linebacker position. It's insane. That group looks pretty good. And I think that's a reason why they're on top of everybody's list right now, and likely the biggest threat for any AFC team who makes it into the postseason. That defense, paired with their fierce offense led by Josh Allen, is one to definitely take seriously. But like I've said with a lot of teams on this list, the Chargers have a great chance at making the postseason. I do think they have a chance at taking down the Buffalo Bills. If we had to face the Buffalo Bills, especially early, it would be their toughest battle of the year, but one that they could take on. If they make it past the Buffalo Bills, let's say in the early rounds of the postseason, I think it would make many consider, at least, the Chargers as strong Super Bowl contenders. And when it comes to battle-tested, I think that would definitely do the trick, right? So the Buffalo Bills will be my number one team. So really, my bottom line in this video, I know a lot of us are super excited. I'm super excited. And you know what? In the end, even after describing all this stuff, I'm very optimistic, right? This Chargers team looks different. This Chargers team, the mentality, the culture, it's changed, it's evolved, it's grown. And I do feel like the Chargers do have a lot going for them, even in facing some of these tougher opponents, right? The mountain that the Bolts need to climb this season is very steep, mainly due to the bolstered star power in the AFC West, and it's going to be a fight to get in this year, even with how much talent we've added in 2022. But like I said, this may be one of the best rosters that I've ever seen for the Chargers, and it's one that carries major playoff potential this season. And if the Bolts can prove, especially early, that this roster is on the same page, they're unified, they got the chemistry, they're ready to take on big opponents, I think we could take on every single one of these teams on the list. And that's, I think, where our biggest advantage lies, right? That schedule is actually kind of important in 2022, especially with all the changes that we've made, right? Yes, we do face a few division rivals in the first half of our season early, right? Like the Vegas Raiders, Kansas City Chiefs. But outside of that, our schedule is actually very favorable early, right? In the early half. We got Jacksonville, Houston, a likely Deshaun Watson-less Browns, Seattle, Atlanta. These games will offer the Chargers breathing room to really gel before facing the brunt of tough opponents later on, right? I think it starts week 10 versus San Francisco. That's pretty significant, right? And after that, things get pretty steep. Arizona, Tennessee, Indianapolis, LA Rams, and of course our division rivals on top of that, right? But my point is, there's a nice runway in place for the Chargers here, right? To gain some steam. And in my humble opinion, momentum is a major factor that plays, a part in professional sports, especially in NFL football. And if they can take full advantage of that runway of this softer early half of the season, I think they can take on whatever challenges may lie ahead, hopefully leading to an appearance in the 2022 playoffs and beyond. So to answer my own question at the top of the video, how many wins do I think it's going to take to make it into the postseason in the AFC West? I think I'm going to go with 12, right? It's going to be very, very steep because we have to also remember we're not just facing the Broncos, Raiders, and Chiefs, right? And these players those teams aren't just facing us either. There's a lot of other teams that we're going to be facing. And even though there may be a bottom team in the AFC West, they're probably going to be better than a lot of other teams on their schedule. And that could lead to some crazy records at the end of the season. So in order to make it in, I think you're going to need a pretty high record. I still do think, a 10-win, 11-win season has a chance at one of those wild card spots, but it's going to be tough getting in this season, man. So you guys let me know in the comment section below how many wins you think it's going to take. And also let me know of the opponents that I listed, what games do you think are going to be the most important for the Chargers to make it into the postseason? I know that the Buffalo Bills would be the biggest test in the postseason, but to make it in, who do you think we have to beat? Just one game. If you could pick one game on the schedule this season to guarantee a win, which one would it be? Which one is the most important? I think me, as much as I would like to say the LA Rams, because that one was going to be pretty tough, I think I would guarantee at least one of the two wins versus Kansas City. We have got to defeat Kansas City and make a statement if we're going to overtake the AFC West, make it into the postseason. So you guys let me know in the comment section what you believe. With that, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you did enjoy this content, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. But we got this, dudes. The Chargers roster looking pretty beastly out there in LA.